I used to think my life was flawless. A thriving career in banking, a wife I adored, and a little boy who was the center of my universe. But everything collapsed the day I stumbled across a DNA test. 3 simple words: paternity, 0%, wiped out 9 years of fatherhood in a single breath. The real devastation, though, didn't hit until 5 years later. My name is Neil Maddox. I'm 43 years old, and until just 3 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. 15 years running the downtown branch of First National Bank, a picture-perfect family, and a reputation as the guy who had life under control. Our home in Maple Grove could have been pulled straight from a glossy magazine spread. A 2-story colonial, crisp white fence, a lawn I spent every Saturday perfecting. Belle insisted the landscaping mattered. It projected the right image for our careers. She was right. Appearances were everything in our world. And Oliver, at 9 years old, was my pride and joy. Every evening he'd meet me at the door, grinning wide with his gap-toothed smile, showing me drawings or stories from school. We had traditions: pancakes every Saturday morning, backyard catch on Sundays, and bedtime tales about knights and dragons I made up on the spot. The morning it all unraveled started like any other. I sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee from the mug Oliver had painted for me at camp. "World's best dad," scrawled in crooked letters. Belle was at the stove, humming with sunlight catching in her auburn hair. Then she asked if I'd moved some papers from her desk. I shook my head. She dug nervously through the mail, movements frantic, until I spotted a white envelope wedged behind the coffee maker. The logo froze me where I sat. Precision Genetics Laboratory. My pulse spiked. I held it up. "Looking for this?" Her face drained of color, and her hand trembled as she reached out. But I pulled it back. "What is this, Belle?" She stammered something about routine medical tests, but I could hear the lie in her voice. I tore it open before she could stop me. DNA results. Paternity probability, 0%. The air went heavy, silence stretching sharp as glass. Belle stood frozen, spatula in hand, eggs dripping to the floor. My hands shook as I read the page again, my mind refusing to process it. "Neil, please," she whispered. "Let me explain." My voice came out raw. "Explain? Explain how the boy I've raised for 9 years isn't mine? Explain how you've lied to me every single day." Her face crumpled. "It's not what you think." I snapped back, waving the paper. "It says 0 chance, Belle. 0. How long have you known?" She admitted she'd suspected, but never confirmed until now. My fury boiled over. "Then who is he? Who's the father?" Through her tears, she said a name that hit me like a steel pipe. Milton Rohr. I knew him, an arrogant ad exec from Belle's old firm. Divorced, smug, the kind of guy who wore $3,000 suits and drove a BMW. Belle choked out her excuse. "It happened during our rough patch, when I was working long hours for a promotion. I was lonely, Neil. I made a mistake." My fists clenched. "A mistake is forgetting to pay the electric bill. This is betrayal. You let me raise another man's child while you sat there knowing." She swore she hadn't been sure until the test, that Oliver was mine in every way that mattered. But I roared back. "Everything changes. I sacrificed, I built my life around that boy, and now you're telling me he isn't mine." Upstairs, I heard Oliver moving around, innocent and unaware. Belle tried to insist biology didn't matter, that love was enough, but I couldn't hear it. 9 years of lies can't be undone with words. At breakfast, I could barely look at him. His smile, his chatter about baseball, every word cut deeper. When he asked why I looked funny, I forced a hollow smile. After dropping him off at school, maybe the last time I'd ever do that, I drove to the bank, numb. My lawyer, Mike Brennan, laid it out straight. I still had legal rights as Oliver's father, but if Milton wanted to fight, it could get ugly. I stared at the family photo on my desk, Oliver's grin staring back, and felt rage and heartbreak twist inside me. My phone buzzed with a message from Belle. "Please come home. We need to talk." I typed back. There's nothing left to say. That night, while Belle begged through tears and Oliver asked why Daddy seemed sad, I packed a bag. I couldn't stay in that house, under that roof, beside the woman who had lied to me for nearly a decade. A hotel room downtown became my exile, the silence crushing. 3 days later, my phone lit up with a call from Patricia, my mother-in-law. She didn't mince words. She knew about the affair back then. Belle had confessed to her while pregnant, unsure who the father was. Patricia admitted she begged Belle to come clean, but Belle was terrified I'd leave. And when Oliver was born, she said he looked just like Milton. For 9 years, Patricia sat through holidays, birthdays, family dinners, watching me love a boy she knew might not be mine. Then she told me something that sent ice through my veins. Milton knew. He'd learned about the test, and now he wanted to meet Oliver. Belle had even been speaking to him behind my back. Patricia finally whispered, "He's considering going to court for custody." I left that diner shaking with fury, but not defeated. Back at the hotel, I paced like a caged animal until a thought struck me. Milton's firm had been shopping for commercial loans. I still had contacts, leverage. Within hours, I had his financials in my hands. His company was drowning, desperate for a $2 million bridge loan. By Thursday, I was seated across from him in his sleek office. He tried to play it cool, thanking me for meeting personally. I leaned back, savoring the irony. "Let's talk about responsibility, Milton. When you make a mistake, do you own up to it, or let others clean up the mess?" He squirmed, clueless. I closed the file and locked eyes with him. "Why should this bank lend you a dime when you spent the last 9 years letting me raise your son?" His face drained of color. He stammered excuses, claiming he hadn't known until recently. I cut him off. "Now you know. And here's what's going to happen. Your loan is denied, your company is finished within 6 months, and if you come anywhere near my family, I'll make sure every bank in the city knows exactly who you are." I straightened my tie, headed for the door, then paused. "One more thing, Milton. Stay away from Oliver. He already has a father." The panic in Milton's eyes as I walked out of his office was worth every sleepless night I'd endured since uncovering that DNA test. Some fights take place in courtrooms, others in boardrooms, and sometimes the sharpest revenge is proving you're simply better at the game than the man who wronged you. 6 months after I sank Milton's loan application, he delivered on his threat. The custody papers came on a Tuesday morning, served to me in the hotel restaurant by a man who looked almost guilty for interrupting my breakfast. Petition to establish paternity and joint physical custody. That's what I read out loud to my lawyer, Mike Brennan, later that morning in his office. "He's got a case," Mike said flatly, scanning the paperwork. "DNA results, biological paternity, and evidence he's been supporting Oliver financially." I snapped. "Supporting him? He's been broke for months." Mike slid Exhibit C across the desk. I stared at the documents. Fresh bank statements, pay stubs from a new job at a bigger firm, proof of deposits into a separate account Belle had opened for Oliver. "This son of a..." My voice trailed off. "He's been setting this up for months." Mike's expression darkened. "It gets worse. He's claiming you've deliberately interfered with his efforts to build a relationship with Oliver." "Damn right I have," I muttered. "Neil," Mike warned. "Listen to me. Legally speaking, Milton Rohr is Oliver's father. You've been acting as dad, which gives you standing, but biology weighs heavier in court. We need strategy here. This can't just be about beating Milton. It has to be about protecting Oliver." The hearing was scheduled for the following month. Until then, I had to watch Milton swoop in with his new visitation rights. He picked Oliver up every other weekend, strutting like he had some God-given right to a boy I'd raised from birth. The first time I saw them together, I sat in my car outside Oliver's school. Milton rolled up in a shiny BMW, finances apparently back on track, and Oliver bolted toward him with excitement. "Mr. Milton," he shouted, using the formal title Belle had clearly coached him on. Watching my son climb into that car felt like my heart was being torn out with rusted pliers. That night, when Belle brought him home, I was waiting. "How was your day with Mr. Milton?" I asked carefully. "It was amazing, Dad," Oliver beamed. "We went to the aquarium. He knows everything about sharks. Next time we might go to the science museum." Each word twisted deeper. I forced a smile. "That sounds great, buddy. He's really smart, Dad. Almost as smart as you." Almost. The word gutted me. After Oliver went to bed, I cornered Belle in the kitchen. "You're pushing him to like Milton." "I'm helping him adjust," she shot back. "He needs to see Milton as another important adult in his life." Important adult? 3 months ago, Oliver didn't even know Milton existed. "And whose fault is that?" she snapped. "If you hadn't spent months trying to destroy him, maybe their introduction could have been normal." Normal? My voice rose. There's nothing normal about a child suddenly being told he has 2 fathers because his mother couldn't stay faithful. The slap came out of nowhere. My cheek burned, but not as much as the truth hanging in the air. "Don't you ever talk to me like that again," she hissed. Yes, I made a mistake, Neil. One mistake. And I've been paying for it every day since. So have I said coldly. The difference is, I didn't know I was paying. The custody hearing was a nightmare. Milton's attorney painted me as a bitter ex-husband using Oliver as a weapon. My lawyer fought to prove I was the only father Oliver had ever known, but the judge seemed laser-focused on bloodlines over bonds. Mr. Maddox, Judge Harrison said, while the court respects the role you've played, we must weigh the biological father's constitutional rights. Your Honor, I countered, struggling to stay calm. Oliver doesn't see Milton as a father. Forcing that relationship could hurt him deeply. That's why we're here, Milton's lawyer cut in smoothly. My client has the right to establish a meaningful relationship, and Mr. Maddox has been actively obstructing it. The ruling was brutal. Milton got supervised visits every other weekend, with the option for overnights after 6 months if progress was made. I kept primary custody as the psychological parent, but the writing was on the wall. That night, I broke in a way I never had before. I drank hard, bar after bar, ranting to strangers about the injustice of the family court system. By sunrise, I woke up in a jail cell with a splitting headache and no memory of how I'd gotten there. Public intoxication and disturbing the peace, the desk sergeant told me. You're lucky no one pressed charges for the other stuff. What other stuff? I asked weakly. You tried to fight 3 guys. Kept shouting they were stealing your son. The humiliation was complete. From respected bank manager to drunken fool. But hitting rock bottom gave me clarity. At least I knew exactly where I stood. Back in my hotel room, I found a message from Mike. Neil, we need to talk. Milton's lawyer is pushing for increased custody. When I called, he confirmed it. They want 50/50ths. Over my dead body, I growled. Listen, Mike said firmly. You need to get it together. If the judge hears about last night, it'll wreck your case. You've got to prove you're the stable parent. Be the man Oliver needs, not the man who's fighting Milton out of rage. I hated it, but he was right. I couldn't win against Milton's biology. My only chance was to win Oliver's heart. The years blurred after that. 5 years since I walked away from Maple Grove, from the white picket fence, from the life I thought was mine. 5 years of drifting through different towns, different jobs, hiding behind my middle name, Neil Joseph instead of Neil Maddox. A ghost of myself. By then I was running a small credit union in Portland, living in a studio apartment, when the knock came on my door. Through the peephole, I barely recognized the woman outside. Belle, older, grayer, worn down by years of guilt. Hello, Neil, she said softly when I opened the door. How did you find me? 3 years, 2 private investigators, she admitted. I didn't invite her in. We stood in silence like strangers. Finally, I asked, why? Because Oliver deserves to know where his real father went. His real father? I thought that was Milton, I said bitterly. Her face crumpled. Milton got joint custody, then got bored. Moved to Chicago. Sends a card twice a year if Oliver's lucky. But Neil, Oliver never stopped asking about you. Every birthday, every Father's Day, every big moment, he wants his dad. I'm not his dad anymore, I muttered. The court made that clear. The court was wrong. She pulled out her phone, showing me a picture. A 14-year-old boy stared back. My boy. My jawline, my mother's eyes, my stubborn chin. Dressed in a baseball uniform, clutching a trophy with that same gap-toothed grin. He made varsity as a freshman, Belle whispered. First in school history. He wanted you to know. I swallowed hard. Why are you really here, Belle? Her voice trembled. Because I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I had another DNA test done. A legitimate one. Not the fake results Milton paid for. The world tilted. What are you saying? Oliver is yours, Neil. He always has been. Milton bribed the lab tech to falsify the first results. He wanted me back. He knew if you believed Oliver wasn't yours, you'd walk away. My hands gripped the doorframe to keep steady. 5 years. 5 years I lived in exile, thinking I'd raised another man's child. Tears filled her eyes. I let him ruin everything, and I've spent every day since trying to make it right. The flight back home felt like stepping into a time machine. Maple Grove looked smaller, worn, the white fence chipped but still standing. Oliver was on the porch when the taxi pulled up. He was taller now, nearly grown, but the moment he saw me, he was 9 again. "Dad?" he called, his voice wavering. "Yeah, buddy. It's me." He ran to me, this 14-year-old who should have been too cool for hugs, wrapping me in his arms like he'd never let go. "I knew you'd come back," he whispered. "I always knew." That night, the three of us sat together in the living room, just like old times. Oliver curled between us, looking up with cautious hope. "What happens now?" I looked at him, my son, my real son, and said, "Now we figure out how to be a family again." "All of us?" he asked. I met Belle's eyes over his head. There was still love there, buried under pain, but also honesty, the thing we'd lacked before. "I don't know if your mom and I can ever be what we were," I admitted. "Too much has happened, but we'll always be your parents. Together." Belle nodded through her tears. "Together." "What about Milton?" Oliver asked. "Milton isn't part of this family," I said firmly. "He never was, and he never will be." 6 months later, I was back at my old bank, rebuilding a life in the town I'd once abandoned. Belle and I were in counseling. Slow, painful, but honest this time. Some days were good. Some weren't. But Oliver thrived. His grade soared, his confidence returned, and he broke more records in baseball. The old house got a fresh coat of paint. My name was back on the mortgage. And every evening when I came home, Oliver ran to greet me with that same bright grin. Older now, but no less radiant. We'd lost 5 years to lies and betrayal. But we had the rest of our lives to make it right. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't avoiding the war. It's surviving it, and finding your way back home.